Hi everyone, welcome to Six String Supply's latest wiring tutorial, and for only the second time we're going to be doing a bass circuit. We've done jazz bass, today we're doing precision bass. It's a very easy, simple circuit to wire. You're talking literally two pots and a jack socket and a capacitor obviously. So as always, I'll just give you a very quick overview of the components and the equipment that we're going to be using. So we'll start off with the components themselves. Now, this is all available on our website in the form, or individually, or in the form of the wiring kits, where you get everything in one bag. You get a Switchcraft jack socket, 1/4 inch standard mono. We'll be using one of those. Two solid shaft, although you can choose split shaft. 250k CTS pots. These are actually the true vintage taper TVT pots that we started using since the beginning of 2018. They are audio, but they're a bit more linear than the standard modern audio pots, without confusing matters too much. We'll just call them audio. Two of those. Bit of cloth wire, black and yellow or black and cream, whatever colours you want. You really don't need that much, to be honest. I'd have thought no more than half a foot of each. You do get more on the wiring kit though, just in case. A little bit of tinned copper, we're going to be using that as the ground wire. Some rubber tubing, again not very much at all, just to protect that ground wire and the terminals of the jack, to make a more durable jack. And a 0.047 capacitor, which does seem to be the modern or typical value for a bass. You will see basses that have a 0.068, but generally most of them will use a 0.047. Just to give you an overview of the actual equipment, same as always, to be honest. We've got the Hakko soldering station, temperature adjustable, some lead-free silver solder, some tinned copper wire there. You can get that off eBay. Regarding your solder, if you're doing this at home and you're working on your own bass, just use the lead 6040. Wear a mask. Obviously, you don't want to be inhaling lead by any means. Don't use lead-free, the commercial lead-free, because it will either make a seasoned professional look very amateur, very hard to get a decent, reliable connection with. I'm not allowed to use lead solder because I'm selling these products commercially, so I use the leaded-free with added silver. So if you do go lead-free, make sure you get the silver. It's a lot easier to work with. And some brass shavings there just to clean my soldering tip, as opposed to a damp sponge. Both work just as well. Okay, the beauty of working on Fender instruments is you can load all your components into the control plate. You don't have to make a template to do it outside. So that's all done. I'm going to load this into the pickguard there, and then we'll take it from there. So I've loaded everything into the pickguard there. Just to give you a very quick overview, I've got my volume control, my tone control, and obviously the jack socket. On the volume and the tones, I've got the terminals of the jacks, the lugs, facing each other. And on my my jack here, I've got the ground. I'll just pull that up a bit. The ground is the lug that's got the inner ring here. So I've got the ground lug of the jack facing this way. That's only because I'm going to have my ground wire on this side. If I had the ground on the other side, which it doesn't matter which way you do it, I'd turn the jack around. Okay, so we're going to start off by, as always, by doing a little bit of tinning, and we're going to ground the lug on the volume pot that's not going to be used. When it comes to tinning, if you've seen enough of our videos, you'll get the idea. But you need to tin the lugs, just give them a light coating of solder before you complete your final solder connection. It just makes everything a lot easier when it does come to doing the final connection. And it makes for a stronger joint, both mechanically and electronically. So to do your tinning, follow your wiring diagram, and you'll see everywhere that you're going to have to solder a wire to, just tin it lightly beforehand. So the main way I do it is to put my soldering iron behind the lug in question and just flow on the solder from the other side. Now, because the heat coming from the soldering iron, that's being transferred to the terminal, which will then be hot enough to directly flow your solder on. What you don't want to do is put your solder directly onto the soldering tip. I'm just going to zoom in a bit here to give you a better view. There we go. Now this terminal here on your volume control on every circuit pretty much, Stratocaster, Telecaster, Les Pauls, SGs, doesn't matter. It needs to be grounded, it's not going to be used, and you need to make a common connection to ground. So to do that, we're going to do exactly the same, but rather than just tinning it, we're going to fill the whole thing with solder. So put your soldering iron behind and just fill it from the other side. Let it cool, and that's because we're going to bend the terminal onto the back of the pot casing and solder it in place. You can of course just use a little bit of wire that comes from the terminal to the back of the pot, if you can see that, and you can solder that in place. That obviously does exactly the same. While that's cooling, we're just going to tin the rest of it. So like I say, just follow your wiring diagram and tin all the terminals on the pots and the jack. Not all of them, just the ones that need doing. So on your tone it's these two. And on your volume control it's actually all of them, as you've just seen. Same again with your jack socket. Soldering iron behind. Just flowing your solder from the other side. Just literally drawing the circle around the lug, give it a nice coating. Same again from this side. Okay, and we are also going to tin the side of the pot casing. You don't have to do it on the side, this is for your ground wire. So I'm going to just put a small puddle here on the side of the volume and here on the side of the tone control. So it's exactly the same principle. Just hold your soldering iron to the side. Heat it up, flow in some solder. And again on the tone control. Okay, so by the time you've done all that, this terminal here should be completely cool. So bend it back onto the back of the pot. And then we're going to ground that. So just hold your soldering iron, if you're doing it this way, hold your soldering iron just behind the joint, heat up the area and flow in some solder, and that will create a bridge between the the terminal and the pot casing itself. Okay, so that's all your tinning done. Next we're going to lay down a ground wire connecting the two pots. You can use either the black cloth wire or whatever colour cloth wire, or some tinned copper. I tend to use tinned copper because it's solid core, single core, and as it's tinned, cloth wire is tinned anyway, but I just find it a bit easier to solder. So I'm going to put this on the side of the pots there, and then we're going to carry on the ground from the pot to the jack. Right, so I've grounded the two pots there. As you can see, I've used tinned copper and covered it in a bit of rubber tubing, and now we need to connect the ground to the ground terminal of the jack that we tinned earlier. So to do that, take, I'm using black, but just take some cloth wire, snip it to length, push your cloth back, solder it to the jack socket, let it cool naturally, push your cloth back down as far as it will go, and again this next bit is completely optional, but as you know I like to do it. Snip off 1/2 inch or so of rubber tubing, push that down, maybe a bit less, shrink it down, like so, and then you need to connect this bit of black cloth wire to the pot casing. So do exactly the same, push your cloth back, tin your wire actually, because you're going directly onto the back of a pot, so just tin that, hold your soldering iron behind it, and when it's hot enough flow your solder on, and tin the pot casing as well. So hold your soldering iron on it, let it heat up and just flow in a little bit. You don't want too much, mind. And then we'll just let that cool for a sec while I change the temperature. Okay. So we're going to solder this in place. So this essentially heats up what with just the solder on your wire and on the pot, because you've already tinned it, so it makes it a lot easier just to make the final connection. And then just use a screwdriver or something just to hold the wire down while you remove your soldering iron. Okay, so that is the ground circuit complete. Now we're going to move on to connecting the two pots together and doing the output from the volume to the jack socket. So now we need to connect the two pots together. It's literally two terminals, or lugs even, that are opposite each other. So if I just hold that up, this is the input of the volume control. It's actually where our pickup is going to be soldered to as well, but we also need to connect a wire from the input of the volume to the lug directly opposite on the tone control. So we're going to pop that in as well. We're using yellow cloth wire here. Use whatever colour you want, black, it doesn't really matter. And we're quite literally just going to pop the wire in between the two lugs, the eyelets on each lug, and solder into place. Now because we've tinned the terminals earlier on, it's not going to be too taxing, if not a bit fidgety. So I'm just going to solder that in place. Just going to snip off the end there, the trimming. And same again, we're just going to pop that into the tone control directly opposite. Just fold that out the way. Okay. That's that done. Finally, we're just going to connect the jack socket. So that's this terminal here on the jack, and that's going to be going to the output of the volume, which is the middle lug there, which is the only one we haven't yet used. So I'm going to do exactly the same again. We're going to connect it to the jack first. Sorry about the light, by the way, bit of a nightmare. And because it's on a pickguard, it's not too easy to... There we go. So same again, push your cloth back. We're going to pop that through the terminal of the jack socket. Now because we've tinned it, it's a fairly easy connection to make. Let it cool naturally. Oh, that's going to snip that. Push your cloth back down. And then again, it's completely optional. If you're using rubber tubing, you might as well just cover that lug with a bit of rubber tubing. Not even half an inch, I'd say. So shrink that down. Okay, and we just need to connect this to the middle lug, the output or the volume control. So snip it to length. Make sure you're happy with the length and the spacing of everything. Trim it off. I'm just putting a tiny bit of tubing here just because I'm pedantic, and look, I love working with cloth wire, but if you're not using sharp enough cutters, the cloth can very easily start to fray. It does look a bit tacky at times, so every now and then I'll put a bit of tubing on just to stop it from fraying. Okay, so put it inside your terminal and then solder that in place. Okay, the last thing we're going to do before the pickups is to connect the capacitor. So if the capacitor, your capacitors will have two leads, and you need to connect one lead to the middle terminal here of the tone control, and then the other side we're going to ground to the back of the pot. Now 99% of capacitors used in guitar and bass are not polarised, so it doesn't matter what way round you put it in. If it is polarised, you'll obviously have to be specific about which capacitor lead you put where. Okay, so we're going to pop that in like so. Just trim off the excess. And the other lead we're going to ground to the pot casing. So we're just going to work out, if I can get the camera back, just going to work out exactly where to do that. I tend to do it on the top because it's easier. sorted. So, as always, lay down your puddle of solder. I'm just going to trim that very marginally. Okay. And then same again, just ground the capacitor. And just hold it down while you remove the soldering iron. Sorted. So that's how you wire your main harness for the Precision Bass. The last two things you need to do, you need to connect your pickups. Now I'm not going to do it on this circuit because this is a pre-wired kit going out to a customer. I don't think he'll be too happy if it's got pickups connected to it. So your pickup, there's only two wires that come from your pickup and Precision Bass. So you can have the, normally it would be white and black, or bare and white, doesn't matter. The bare one is always the ground, and it might not even be, it could be black, but your ground is going to go to the back of the pot, wherever you feel comfortable, or even on the side if it's easier for you. And the actual pickup wire itself is going to go to this terminal here. It's the input of the volume control, the same one as where that yellow wire is going to. That's your pickup, and then of course you need to connect the main ground that normally comes from the bridge. Without that, when it's all plugged in, your circuit's not grounded. Even though we've grounded everything here, you need to connect all this to the main ground. So you'll normally have a wire coming through the body, and you connect that to the back of the pot as well. Whichever pot's near, it's normally the volume one. Okay, so thanks very much for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We have got a few more videos lined up in the pipeline, but they'll be published as and when. A few tips and tricks, how to wire push-pull pots, CTS push-pull pots in particular. A lot of people have problems with them. One or two funky circuits and variations. So if you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. Please subscribe to our fledgling YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.